Hi there again, James. This is
Right.
our hour from HBXL and Comera Professional, and James Powell is one of the team at Comera Professional. Perhaps you could give me just a quick resume of Comera Professional and the services that you offer before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's session.
Of course, yes. So we are a professional services firm working in multiple disciplines. My own specialty is working in accounting and tax advice for individuals and businesses, whether that's a sole trader or a limited company. We also offer individual financial advice, say to owners of companies or directors, and also other areas as well, such as marketing, HR, and then other services offered by the wider Comera group, which there are many.
Okay, well,
there's all our companies online and all the things that we do there.
Okay, so specifically today we're talking about the accounting side, and that's a good job that it's your speciality, not mine. I'm operations director here at HBXL, so I have a kind of a broader outlook on the business, but obviously the financials are core to the health of our business, and obviously every business across the land. Loads has happened since you and I talked back in May. So back in May, there was a lot of noise around the business support measures from government to help businesses through what's been a very, very strange period of time for every business. I have to say, a lot of our builders, the building firms, are busy back on site, busy building. There's obviously a lot of pent-up demand from lockdown. Lots of projects restarting, lots of new leads coming down the wire, which is all good, but it's obviously quite a risky time as well for businesses. So in today's broadcast, what I wanted to do was help firms consider how they look at their financial health of the business, and they plan and plot for the future few quarters into later 2021. I mean, this year has gone so fast. I think most businesses have kind of held on by their fingertips for the ride. But like everything in life, if you plan for it, you can be more likely to survive it, and with less stress as well, I should add. So we've got lots of businesses, small builders listening across the UK. There's going to be different scenarios all over. I mean, just looking at the news today, yet more regional and local lockdowns, whilst other areas of the countries go about their business, as if almost COVID isn't there. I guess they, trying to social distance and make sure that they're doing the right thing, health and safety wise, but otherwise getting on with it. So today I thought I might split the session into two, one being more about the business side, the cash flow planning, the financial management, and maybe we could backload the session in terms of the ongoing business support and some of the things that are tailing off from government, which our listeners might want to take a note of if they've got a pen handy. The things that some of them are ending quite soon, so if builders want to take advantage of them, they've got to get a wriggle on. So I'm going to stop talking. I feel like I'm on a monologue.
Oh, please.
So we've got these three scenarios, I guess, going on at the moment. There's business as usual for most of the country, subject to health and safety policies being adhered to, and as usual as it can be right now. We've then got some areas in a local lockdown, and hopefully it just stays that way and doesn't become a full lockdown, which is that third scenario. So we've got business as usual-ish, local lockdown scenarios, and the implication of a full lockdown. And each of those is going to affect businesses differently. So yeah, your thoughts, James. What should builders be doing and thinking about to protect themselves right now?
Well, as you've identified, Joe, regardless of the scenario, the most important thing is proper planning. Understanding your business position. You need to know what's expected in the future and look at the different scenarios, see what's likely to happen, and then consider how that will impact on your business going forward and what you can do about it. And the simplest and most effective way to do that is to look at your forecast budgets and your cash flow forecast, which is similar but two different ideas. When we talk about budgeting, it's slightly more abstract. It's more similar to what you might see in a set of forecast accounts, for example. So whereas compared to that, a cash flow forecast is very specific. It's the money in your bank. It's how much is coming in and how much is going out. Of those two, I would say that certainly cash flow is the more vital and more useful one, because it gives you a very good idea of what to expect. Give you an example of a difference. If you are setting up a budget that's based on your profit and loss statement, so something like what we would call a capital expenditure, maybe buying some machinery, for example, that would go for a profit and loss statement, so you wouldn't think about that, you leave that out. However, that is still a cash payment. So if you're setting up a cash flow forecast, you would include that, and then you would know, can I afford it? Will I have the money in the bank at this point? If not, when will I, and when can I do it? And how will that impact my work going forward? One thing that is possibly going to be overlooked, and we're going to warn everyone not to overlook it because it's not something they've had to think about before, is any additional COVID costs as well. So when you're thinking about, do I need to purchase protective equipment, or for example masks and that sort of thing, make sure that's all in there as well, so you're not missing anything else. And then even more than that, there are other things which aren't really thought about in profit and loss terms, but are cash flow items. Tax is a good example. And it's making sure that all of that's in there, so you've got every penny down, you know exactly what's going to happen. And then that will give you your kind of your base scenario to go from. And then we can look at the possible options going forward for what's going to happen with COVID, and then what needs to be put into that forecast, what needs to be taken out, and what the impact of that will be. So you've identified the, in fact, I believe your Estimator Express software can now do this. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, well, we've just launched a new estimating calculator for Estimator Express, which calculates the on-site costs of the equipment or the extra labour that you're going to need to cover your COVID secure measures. So that is your PPE, that is the additional toilets and hand washing, the extra portaloo cleaning, the face masks, the signage, all of that, and it can add up to a significant amount actually. I don't know how many builders have actually taken the time to perhaps top that up for a given project, but on a 9-month house development, you could be talking, £9,000-10,000 worth of COVID measures, and it's really surprising. And I must admit, when I first heard that through the construction engineers team, I thought, really, that can't be right. And actually, that's a significant amount of money. So that could end up being, a significant percent of your construction costs actually. So having a good handle on your COVID cost measures now is really important, because it's going to impact every project for the foreseeable, and as is the extra time that you should be allowing really for making sure your trades, the different subcontractors, come in their own subcontractor bubble onto site. I know a lot of builders are probably working as if it possibly isn't an issue, but if, say, for example, you've got your electrician come on site and do first fix, and you've got your plumbers coming on for site first fix, and maybe you end up with your decorators at some point doing something, or your joiners, say, you need to keep them separate as bubbles, because otherwise they are going to knock each other out for every project. If one or two people within a bubble come down with COVID, but you've mixed the bubbles, really they should all be off for the full 14 days. So you've got to be very careful and conscious of that kind of thing, which our Estimator Express in its Gantt chart, we've got a new COVID profile to help you plan and keep those guys in their own respective bubbles. And that can then add, on a small job a week or two, but on a bigger job it could add a few weeks at least to the project. So it's those kind of things, and then that has a finance cost knock-on impact. If you're borrowing money, say, for a housing development, and obviously it has all the other knock-on effects, cost of scaffolding being on site for a few weeks extra, or cost of portaloos being on site for another few weeks. It's all up. It all adds up. And obviously in development and building, cash flow is king. There's so much money coming and going all the time. So having a good cash flow handle, I hope most of our builders are doing this, but if they're not, that's something Comera Professional can help with, is it? To kind of develop cash flow profiles for the business and so on.
Absolutely. We do cash flow modelling as a service, and it is a valuable one because lots of people, unless you're one of those strange people like some people that I know who actually enjoy working with numbers, it's not something you've maybe ever had to study or train in, but it is a service that we can provide. Or if you have an existing cash flow model, we can review it, we can go through it and say, oh, you haven't thought about this, or is that number looking correct because you said this elsewhere, and making sure that everything is as tidy and as tight as it can be.
Okay.
It's all these things that you need to think about, and from there you can then modify it based on what you feel the next stage, next scenario will be. And as you said, there are 3 likely scenarios.
Yeah.
First one, business as usual, which is arguably probably the most positive one that we could see from a business standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said there's been a lot of pent-up demand following the lockdown. And you can't see it, but I can actually see there's a window to the right of me here, and there is actually construction work happening out there right now. So we can very much see that the industry is on the up. We've seen increased business confidence. We've seen increased house purchases, which means more work needs to be done on them. More people looking to maybe even build their own homes as well. But even though it's business as usual to a point, there are certain rules that we need to consider. Most recently, the so-called rule of 6, which is limiting social bubbles. Now, it doesn't apply to the workplace, so it wouldn't necessarily apply to builders themselves, but there are other considerations there. For example, as we've spoken in the past, if someone's looking to maybe have an extension on their house, normally they would go and stay with friends or go and stay with family, but the new rules mean that they might not be able to do that, which means they might not be able to move out to have the work done at all. So that is still, unfortunately, having an impact. The second consideration is, this is hopefully a worst case scenario, but there is the slim possibility that this will see a rise in infection rates, which could mean more rules coming in the future. One of which we have seen in a few places, is the local lockdown. So this is where it's fairly clues in the name, where an area, a city or a county effectively goes back under lockdown rules, similar to what we saw in April. Now, the big exception here is, again, it's generally not being applied to workers. In Manchester, for example, you are still allowed to go out to work and go to someone's house if you are performing work there. But that has the same considerations to rule of 6. Are people able to move out while you work on the house?
I guess it has a subtler effect as well. It's a bit of a psychological one. If you know that in your local area the numbers are higher, do you want an apparent stranger to come to your home? Full stop. I think it would probably make me think a little bit harder. Do I really want that work done right now? Can I put it off for a few months until things calm down a little bit? I think would be, being my overriding feeling. But maybe I'm alone on that. But I can imagine it would have an impact.
On the flip side, it does potentially mean that there will still be demand in the future from once the kind of initial post-lockdown rush is over. There'll be the people who were more cautious about that, then saying, okay, it's safe now I can get this work done. So there is a rolling positive effect to that as well.
Yeah, sure.
One thing that people might want to consider if they are having this local lockdown issue and they can't maybe do work locally, but if they're being offered jobs further afield that they can't get to, is maybe set up a commission system with contacts in that area saying, hey, I've got this job that I've been offered in X city that I can't reach. Would you like it? And in return, how about a finder's fee?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's quite an interesting one, actually. I don't suppose many firms will have thought of that. Okay, so I guess full lockdown is the other end of the. I'm just looking at the notes. I've got tons to talk to you about today. So full lockdown. God help us.
Hopefully not. No, this is.
But you never know. I guess. So we're talking about return of measures to kind of the earlier in the spring. I guess. I guess what do you imagine the likelihood of that is, and or impact if it comes?
It's certainly the. I would say the least likely scenario. The fact is there isn't really the will for it, and a strong case that there isn't the necessity for it, because whilst there still are ongoing cases and people, and COVID still very much is out there and is in play, particularly the infection rates have dropped dramatically from March and April time when the lockdown became necessary. And it is hard to say what it would look like if it did happen. Would it be like it was in April, where it's just flat out don't leave your house for work or leisure or anything? Or would it be similar to local lockdowns, where it's restricted leisure activities, you can't go out and visit friends or go to a restaurant, but if you're doing your job, you can still go out to that, and you can still go on to someone's house if you're doing building work there. But again, that third time we've mentioned, it's actually the same consideration of would people be able to go off while work is being done on their houses, and what would the impact of that be? The flip side of it, however, is although it's potentially the most economically damaging, it's also the scenario that's most likely to come with additional government support. If you recall the budgets back in March and July, where they announced all of the loan schemes and the furlough schemes, almost by necessity, we probably have to have a repeat of that to make sure that it didn't actually cause a disaster.
Yeah.
So there's a silver lining there. And again, just to emphasise, this is certainly the least likely scenario, and hopefully the one that will never come to pass.
Okay, so we've got these three different scenarios. So you're saying that one should be considering how you overlay that on a cash flow, are you? So you've got your kind of normal, your business's normal cash flow, trying to overlay these additional costs that we were talking about in terms of the COVID measures and not absorbing them for the client.
Absolutely. And then you can have a think about what would happen if scenario A, scenario B, scenario C happened. And then even if they don't come to pass, you can plan for it. So it's almost like having an emergency response. So the news comes up and says, right, this new measure has come into place. You go, great, I've already planned for that. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I guess as well, and we'll come to talk to the bounce back loans in a minute. Well, there's more detail that you've got on those. But if you've done your cash flow planning and you're thinking, eek, well, if this happened in, a month or two's time over the winter, everyone's thinking that the infection rate will obviously be at its worst. If you want to be thinking about plugging some of those gaps, you need to be doing it now, really,
yes.
so that you're ready. And as I say, we'll talk about bounce back loans in a mo, but that's the 50k loans into small businesses, which are offered through most high street banks and what have you. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So I guess we're thinking really we have this kind of Nike tick recovery that we've got going at the moment. It's quite a sharp downturn, quite a steady
gradual rise back.
Yeah, and I guess construction, as we've said, out of many industries, are actually doing quite well because a lot of it is outdoor work, and you can crack on.
Yeah.
So we're going to see. I was just again looking at some of the notes. We were talked about pent up demand. There's some other. I guess what other impacts are we thinking about in terms of economic recovery? Is there anything that we should touch on before we start talking about some of the current schemes that are available? As
you say, what we're seeing at the moment, and hopefully it will hold steady, is the so-called Nike swoosh recovery or Nike tick recovery, where it's a very sharp drop, which we've already seen. That's been and done, and then gradually starts to come back to normal. It's slightly different to the V-shaped recovery, which is basically big drop, big gain, and then everything's normal again. Unfortunately, although there was hope that would be the case, it hasn't turned out to be realistically, and probably never was going to be, because no matter how optimistic we are, the fact is we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
But it is certainly better than the other scenario, which is the U-shaped recovery, where it's just sharp drop and then goes along at the bottom for quite a long time, and then at some point goes back up. Thankfully, we haven't seen that either, because that could have been a real problem for the next few years. But there are many factors that people are going to need to consider, and businesses are going to need to be considering. Once this pent-up demand and this flurry finishes, we come to people need to think about whether they can pay for construction projects, because what we're seeing now is people probably who already had this planned, the lockdown hit, and they thought, right, we'll put this on hold, but as soon as we have the option, we'll go forward with it. And that's definitely driving things at the moment. But after that, we'll be left with the people who are still considering what they want to do with construction. They want to build a new house, they want to build an extension, and they'll be thinking primarily, can we pay for it?
And I get there's quite a lot of jobs at risk at the moment. In a lot of my own friends and family say that they're within the businesses that they work in, there's murmurings of, oh yes, you know, we're reviewing staff, or we don't need so many people in the office now. You know, we don't need these business support roles because no one's there, you know, in the office. We know all about leisure and impacts on airlines and so on. But I guess that has a trickle down effect to the rest of the economy ultimately, in that there are you know, more people out of work and therefore more uncertainty, more anxiety, and then it has an impact. So I think although our builders are not impacted now, they're probably not going to be impacted in the short term. But I guess as they go into 21, we need to be really planning for the success that we want there, planning not only through our accounting processes, but I guess in terms of how we present our businesses, how we do our health and safety to reassure potential clients. Again, quick plug for HBXL, the health and safety expert software will help you with all your COVID secure measures. So you've got to get all this stuff lined up and your project management sorted so that you can manage these bubbles effectively and do as much of the work remotely, so you can, as I say, reassure clients and carry on as close to normal as possible. But it starts with the financial plan. So, you know, we've talked about that, and then I guess it's more about keeping your eye on the business support measures, and you have to be quite proactive to find out about these things. I find as you know, within our business, within HBXL, going on the .gov website quite regularly within the kind of the business section, there's always updates about the support that's available, and you can sign up to emails from them in terms of what's coming out. So whether that's about the furlough scheme, we know that there's some murmurings of how that's going to change at the end of October. Obviously it's going, we'll talk in a minute again about furlough in a moment, but what comes after that, what support is there after that, what additional assistance or grants are there available to SMEs during these challenging times. So it's really worth signing up to the email update for that, and it also tells you about what regions or locales are coming under review for local lockdown, so you can be ahead of that. You know, you're thinking, you know, I can see that this area is under review at the moment, and there are various stages that an area goes through before they're under lockdown, you know, whether they're under review and additional support measures from government before they go into lockdown. So you can stay ahead of the curve, and I think that's important to be ahead of the process, so you can see what's coming.
Yeah, and knowing where the opportunities are, because people are understandably worried about lost income and possibly are suffering that, but also we're hearing many people have managed to save a lot of money in lockdown as well, just from not going out anywhere and not spending unnecessary money. So that is money that could well be spent on home improvements and could be a boon for the industry going forward.
I guess that's something you can help with at Comera Professional when doing the cash flow forecasting with a building firm and or business model, because you can be helping review, you know, what are these costs? Are they essential? Could we be looking at something, you know, different within your business to make it, you know, healthier? You know, it's really interesting to have a separate pair of eyes on. And it's, you know, often it comes down to common sense, but we're also in our own businesses, you know, wood for the trees. It's really helpful to have someone else kind of cast an eye over and give some thoughts.
Yeah, it's certainly something we can do. And we've been talking about this in terms of individuals and the work they need, but the same is true for businesses as well. They might want to invest in a new office or invest in building a new warehouse.
Yeah, well, I think probably not on the office front. I think most of us we're kind of not downsizing, is that the right word, but you know, trying to reduce the risk associated, I guess, with having a big office. But yeah, certainly equipment, capital purchases to enable, and there's lots of grants out there to assist with this kind of thing at the moment. Again, we'll talk in a moment about that. But one thing I know that Comera as a group are aware of is the new kind of Green Deal Mark II that launched in September, and I know that's not your kind of speciality there, but I know within the Comera group, and one of your colleagues who's been talking to me about Green Deal 2 and the financial support that it gives the client, the homeowner, to have these energy improving measures on their house. And if you can become part of that, if you can sign up with Trustmark as a Green Deal provider, you can benefit from the client effectively having 10K's worth of, up to 10K's worth, I should say, of energy performance improvements applied to the house, whether it's solar or ground source heat pumps or secondary items such as replacement doors, windows, and what have you. I think I might have lost James for a moment. I'm just going to pause and we'll hopefully get James back. All right, we have you back, James, and you can tell this is live as we lost you there briefly for a moment. Yeah, so we were just talking about the Green Deal Mark II, which just looking at my notes there is the Green Homes Grant, and you can find out more, I understand, from the government website. And viewers, if you want to kind of look out for this, there's another live presentation that we're going to be running through what the Green Deal 2 or the Green Homes Grant, I can't stop calling it Green Deal 2, but it's a Green Homes Grant. So we'll talk further on that on a separate occasion. And I guess there's other funding starting to be available. I
think there's a new SME fund just announced.
For housing development.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is hot off the press actually, the start of September. So we don't have huge amounts of information here at HBXL on this. But I understand that it's a £25 million revolving fund from Homes England to lend to SME housing developers. I think it's between. I think it's construction loans are between 400,000 and 2.5 million for schemes involving 2 or more houses, with up to 80% of construction costs, which is really good. So that is the revolving construction fund. I'll just find the name of it specifically, and you can make applications for it now. I think it's just called the revolving development finance fund. But we'll email customers of HBXL more details as that comes out. But yeah, that's good news for SME housing.
It's all part of the current push for house building, which is very positive for the industry. Lots of government incentives coming on.
Absolutely. And so there's lots to talk about now, I guess, if we move to part 2 of the conversation, which was about the schemes that are coming to an end and some things that are going to be ongoing throughout 2021. But there are a few things that should focus the mind then, I guess. So we're going to touch on furlough scheme, job retention bonuses, I believe, which are a helpful cash incentive, small cash incentive for firms keeping staff on. We've got more on the CBIL, I call them CBIL loans. What's the full name, the proper name?
The Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme.
Okay.
CBILs is much less of a mouthful.
Yes, CBIL, and the bounce back loans as well, which are really helpful for SMEs. So I'll stop talking and let you kind of tell us a little bit more about where we're at with furlough and what's happening with that.
Yeah. So the furlough scheme is now unfortunately coming to an end, specifically at the end of October, although it is being wound down slightly before that. So claims which are made in October will be of a slightly lower value. Previously, you could claim up to 80% of an employee's wages and costs. That's now going down to 60%. Mm-hmm. So at that point, businesses are going to need to sit down and have a long, hard think and make some decisions about keeping staff. Will they have to make them redundant? And this is where cash flow forecasting becomes absolutely essential, because you need to think, right, how much am I spending on staff? When am I spending it? Can I afford it? And what will change if I have to pare that number down? So do keep in mind, in many cases, redundancy does have its own costs. So make sure you're not neglecting to model these in if you are unfortunately having to go down this road. And then think about what the impact will be of having fewer staff. What jobs can you do? Conversely, if you're having to bring staff back from furlough, which after October you will do unless you are making them redundant, you also think, what are the positives? Are there more jobs that I can take on? Can I make use of these people now I have no choice? There is a certain amount of incentive to keep staff on and keep them working in the form of the job retention bonus. Now this is a £1,000 bonus for all employees that are brought back from furlough.
So tell me that is 1,000 each.
1,000 each, yes, and it is for any employee that is brought back, as long as they're kept employed until January 2021. So it isn't just people that you brought back early. So if you have guys coming back after the end of October, they will still be eligible. Again, as long as they are employed up until January. But the onus here is very much on incentivizing people to keep their staff, keep them working, and keep making them useful. The caveat is that whoever you're claiming for has to be paid at least £520 per month.
Right.
Unless someone in just for a couple of hours a month to do a little bit here and there, they probably, unfortunately, wouldn't be eligible unless they're on a very high hourly wage.
But they're still doing that part time.
Yes, yeah, as long as they meet that £520 per month threshold. And this is all has to be processed through HMRC's real-time information system, which we'd imagine the majority of people are now doing because it's very convenient. So that is a nice incentive, and make sure that you are, if you're not aware of this, make sure you are claiming it. It can be claimed in February of next year. So once that January threshold is passed, you can put your claim in and receive the money.
And as I understand it, more information is going to be available about how the scheme will operate, any small print on it at the end of September or by the end of September.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's worth signing up to that government website for updates on COVID, because you will get information about that sent to you about when the detail of it is available. I sound like I'm advertising for the government website today, but it is quite handy, honestly.
There's a lot of information on that.
Come through, so as it happens. Okay, so that's furlough then. So we can't put anyone else on it anyway. So it's almost old news, but just more importantly, it's about planning for next steps. If you've still got people on furlough, what's happening from November the 1st with these people? Are you having to consult and let people go, or are you keeping them on? And if you do keep them on, make sure you claim for the bonus per employee. Kind of like more detail to follow from government on that then. But again, I'm hearing from you, you've got a plan for this, you've got to cash flow it. And redundancy can be quite an expensive process if you have to go through it. So
can be, yes.
Yeah, especially if you've got people that have been working with you for quite some time. So back to Sybil.
Oh, yes.
So this is the coronavirus business interruption loan. Yep. So people are rapidly running out of time on this one then.
Yes, that's right. So if you recall the Sybil's, we discussed that in quite a bit of detail last time we spoke. It's loans for companies which are affected by coronavirus on reasonably generous terms. You have the interest paid on your behalf by the government for the first year. But it is now coming to an end, or at least applications for it are coming to an end at the end of September. So it is quite a tight deadline. So again, as we touched on earlier, sit down, look at your forecast, your cash flow forecast, and think, right, am I going to need additional funds? If so, is this a route that I should go down? If you are going to do that, make sure you include this in your cash flow forecast going forward. You have to look at the interest repayments once the government funding for that comes to an end, and also your capital repayments as well. Again, these are items you wouldn't normally include when you're looking at profit and loss, but they are cash flow items. Is money going to be going out of your bank? So make sure you include that as well. If you are looking to apply for these and you're worried about the deadline, we do assist in this service. It's something that we offer to customers. We can help fill out applications on your behalf, review the documentation, because you do need to submit financial information as part of the loan package. And we can make sure that we can sit down and get that as right as possible. If you are, again, if you're going to go down this road, make sure you've got a repayment plan as well.
So it's important to be looking at, right now you might be looking, if you considered your bank account right now, you might be looking quite healthy, but as we were talking about before, cash is king in a building firm. So it's looking at what does it look like in the spring, where are you going to be looking, and making sure that you're in a healthy place for then as impacted by COVID. Obviously, it is all under this umbrella of impact by COVID, but be thinking slightly bigger than right here, right now. It's what do you what do you need for the health of the business over a slightly longer time frame. And I guess the bounce back loans, they're perhaps a slightly easier ask, because they're an easier application process for up to £50,000 loan, as I understand it. And we've got longer to apply for these, have we?
Yes, that's running until the 4th of November.
Right.
So a bit more time there. And you say the amounts borrowable are smaller, £50,000 to the limit, but they are also much easier to apply for. You don't need so much robust financial information. You don't need to satisfy the lender on quite the same level that you're able to repay it. And we're hearing that people who apply for them are getting a good rate of success and getting that money quite quickly as well. On top of that, there are also various regional grants being made available, which are running through the regional growth hubs. These are grants up to, is it £3,000 or £5,000?
I think from my understanding, it kind of varies by region. Yeah, I think all local authorities have within these regional hubs have been granted money from government to help businesses spend on things like, surprisingly, I thought actually, it could be website redevelopment to help with growth off the back of the COVID challenges, perhaps a rebrand of the business in response, financial advice, as I understand it, business consultancy, to help guide you navigate through the challenges. So here in the Southwest, which is where HBXL are based, as I understand it, there's up to £3,000 that can be claimed for, and also it also includes software. Actually, I should say,
yeah, it does. Yeah.
HBXL. It does include digital solutions as well, such as software to help. So that could be something like, say, health and safety expert, where you're trying to sort your COVID secure measures out, which is an absolute legal requirement for every firm to have a COVID-19 risk assessment in place. And as I've said before, so I'm repeating myself, sorry, about reassuring your clients, especially as numbers rise again and there's regional or local lockdowns. So yeah, you can apply through your regional growth hub. Now, some of them have got quite tight deadlines. Some of the deadlines may have passed by the time this airs. So I think it's one to just look out for. And again, if you signed up with a government email, you'd find out about these coming out in advance. So these have been announced the last few weeks. So you could be applying.
You can also see the funding allocations on gov.uk as well, because it's all been done by region, and different areas are getting different amounts.
Okay, I did hear, and this is probably a little bit of hearsay, and I know, James, you won't be able to kind of, probably I'm putting you on the spot about this one, but I heard this week that there was, in some regions, there was extensions to the business rates relief because some of the monies hasn't been allocated properly, or rather fully, should I say, in some of the regions. The cut-off point has been and gone, but I believe that some regions have still got some funding. So it's worth looking at your own local authority's website and see where they're at. So if you've got premises and you didn't end up quite claiming under the rates relief, you may well still be able to, but in many regions that's come to an end.
It's always worth checking.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I've been quite surprised the level of support that has been coming through to businesses at a local level, actually. So yeah, keeping your eye on those websites. There was something else I was going to mention before we move on to some of the ongoing schemes. I know we're going to talk about deferred VAT payments and things like that. Are there any current deferrals that our builders should be aware of? Or are there any other schemes, such as the self-employed schemes, where they're able to claim quarterly in arrears, much like furlough? Presumably that is coming to an end as well.
Yeah, so the deferrals which were made available were for the sort of March, April, May, June period. So we're not aware of any at the moment, though that may change. The situation is, as it has been for the last few months, very, very fluid. There's always new schemes being announced, new ways of helping people. So certainly keep your eyes out for anything on that front. Okay.
And the equivalent to kind of furlough for self-employed, the self-employed, which is a lot of our customers, I guess, that's come to an end as well, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yeah, but they might bring it back. Hopefully, it will.
Well, that's one. Yeah, one to watch. So I guess back to some of the ongoing schemes, things that government has launched reasonably recently. So obviously apprenticeships have been a thing in construction for forever, but there is some additional incentives you're going to talk us through in a minute in terms of taking on an apprentice. And something that I think is quite interesting is this new Kickstart scheme, where you'll tell us the details, but there's some, some really good financial support for taking on younger people between 16 and 24 years old. So I'll let you fill us in a little bit then on the apprenticeship and Kickstart side.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, as you say, apprenticeships are very, very crucial to the construction industry. It's been a long-standing part of how the business model operates, and it's very, very good for young people as well. And quite possibly there is currently a larger pool of apprenticeship candidates at the moment, so you can certainly look to get the best of the best. The current incentive that's being offered by the government, and this was announced back in July as part of the summer budget, but the details are still kind of being worked out and coming forward, is effectively it's similar to the job retention bonus in that you will be paid a cash sum for taking on apprentices. Now the specific amount is, if it's somebody under the age of 25, it's a £2,000 bonus that is paid to your company.
Right, okay.
That is also on top of the £1,000 bonus that was already being given to people taking on apprentices between 16 and 18 to take on someone fresh out.
Right, so there's £3,000 bonus, effectively. The 1 plus, clearly, yes. 1 plus 2 is 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm good at maths.
They taught me that in accounting school. It was very handy.
Yes.
So yeah, if you take on an apprentice who is aged between 16 and 18, the total will be 3,000. Someone who's between 18 and 24 will be 2,000. If you take on someone who's 25 or over, it's you get a £1,500 grant as well. Also, if you're doing traineeships separate to apprenticeships, you can also ask for a £1,000 grant per trainee aged 16 to 24 as well. So that's a separate little thing being offered for.
Okay, so there's a potential for £7,000 there to take on an apprentice at this point in time.
It's quite a lot of money. I mean, I'm sure it's 7,000 because it is separate amounts. You would get a £3,000 for the apprenticeship, and then £1,000 for a trainee, and they're kind of separate roles. So unfortunately, it doesn't add up to a big amount, which is a shame. It would be good if it did, but it is still a very good bonus. And of course, this is a very good time to be looking for apprentices, because there are a lot of people out there looking to take work on. Similar to this is the Kickstart scheme. Now, this is for taking on young people as employees rather than apprentices. The caveat is it has to be someone who is receiving universal credits.
Right.
So although the application is done through gov.uk as per normal, it is in tandem with the job centre as well. Now, what this specifically gives you is the government will fund 100% of that employee's national minimum wage, your national insurance contributions on their behalf, and your employer pension contributions up to the equivalent of 25 hours per week.
Right. Okay.
So whatever they would have been paid, it is at national minimum wage for 25 hours per week, plus the national insurance contributions for pensions. The government will give you that money to cover those costs.
Right. So, and how long is that for?
So it's for 6-month job placements. Though you can then hire another person to replace the person who's gone after the 6 months. So you can keep it ongoing. And at the moment, it's running until December 2021. The government has made it very clear that this is the initial run period, and of the schemes we've been looking at, this is the one probably most likely to be continued. Not guaranteeing that it will, because I don't work in the government, I don't make decisions, but it's certainly the one that looks the most likely to be continuing. There is a minor catch with it, though, is that the applications have to be done in what you might call a job batch of 30 or more jobs. So if you're a large company looking to create 30 jobs under this scheme, then fine, you can just go ahead and apply, no issues at all. If you're a smaller company, you have to kind of group together to get to that 30 placement. So you can join up with 3 other companies, all of you may looking to create 10 jobs. You apply together as a group. And the government is creating regional contacts to facilitate this, and you can in fact apply to be a contact yourself if you want to get this organised and make sure that everyone in your area, I mean, it doesn't have to be in your area, you can in theory join up with anybody around the country to make this happen.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here then is that you really need to be linking up via the Gov website with a local regional kind of hub for this, really. Yeah. I can't imagine lots of our listeners are thinking, oh yes, I'll be the regional contact here. Although I should add, from what I understand, if you are that regional person, you can get a bonus. I think it's of £300 per candidate for your.
That's correct. So there is an incentive to get up and help people on this as well.
Yeah, but I think most people want the easiest route in, which is they've got a couple of placements maybe that they want filling. You need to go to the Gov website, search for Kickstart. You'll find the local hub for you where those jobs have been advertised. You can then get your jobs advertised. But I think this is a really good one. I mean, of anything, I'm just looking at my notes on this. So we just to recap on it. So it's called Kickstart, aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds who are already on universal credit. So perhaps they've been not working through lockdown. Covers 100% of their minimum wage salary, employers' NI, pensions for up to 25 hours a week. So you could, in theory, hire them for just the 25 hours, free of charge, actually, which is crazy. Clearly, you could have them full time, and obviously you would then pay the top up, I presume. And this is available for quite some time.
It is, yeah, December 2021. The government will also help with granting money for support and training costs as well. It's up to £1,500, and that can be paid for their support, for their training, and even things like uniforms if they're required. That's to make sure that really taking on these people isn't going to cost your business, and it's something that you can offer.
Yeah, I guess the government goal is to keep them, you want them to stay on after this 6-month period because they're so embedded within your business that, you wouldn't want to let them go. So, and hopefully that's the case. But yeah, no, I think that's an interesting one. So that's Kickstart.
Yeah, it's a Kickstart scheme.
Okay, and it's a bit depressing talking about things like VAT deferrals and so on that many businesses will have made. So that's going to start catching up with us all. So VAT deferrals. Were there any other deferrals?
Also, income tax deferrals for example, sole traders or partnerships in non-incorporated businesses.
Right. Okay. So I think we did mention before. So that's taxes that government kindly allowed us to defer from earlier in lockdown. So we're talking that kind of anything that was due between April and June.
Yes, yeah. So during the actual lockdown period when everyone was at home.
Okay, so if you deferred a VAT payment that was say end of June, that was your quarter end for VAT, you've then got to pay that back when?
March of 2021.
Okay, so during the month of March, by the end of March, it's got to be settled and cleared.
Unfortunately, yes, it was a deferral and not letting anybody off.
Darn it!
I know, right? In the case of income tax, it's January 2021.
Right. Okay, so that's an earlier deadline then. Okay, and well, for cash flow purposes, that's within a quarter or so. So really need to get that nailed in terms of your cash flow and business.
Yeah, make sure that's in your modelling. Make sure you're aware that this is going to be cash coming out of your bank at that time.
I think that could be quite a nasty shock for some businesses when that comes round. Although hopefully, because everyone's been very busy, they should be in a good position to pay it. But I think if you've not planned for it, it'll be it could be a bit of a shock. And obviously HMRC will come chasing for that.
They will, yes. So make sure you've got a plan to repay that. I believe we did touch on that last time we spoke, saying if you're going to take advantage of it, make sure you know that you have to pay it and know how you're going to do it. Having said that, if there are problems with payments, if you're struggling with paying back, you can make arrangements with HMRC to set up repayment plans going into the future. If you are needing to do this, main advice is do it early. Make sure you are in contact with them because I've been in touch with HMRC quite a lot. It's part of my everyday role, and I know how busy they are.
Yeah.
And I need to get more so as these deadlines approach. So if you leave it to the last minute, you might find you can't even get through to them on the phone.
Right. Okay.
Make sure you put anything in place early with them. Contact them as soon as you can if you need to, and say, right, here's the situation. I can't pay this. What can we do? And they will help you.
Okay. Well, that's good news that there is some discussion around it possible.
It's certainly not in their interest for anybody to not be able to pay their tax because they can't. They'd much rather sort out a plan and receive it later.
Okay, good to know. Wow, well we've covered loads of ground today. I guess we'll hopefully meet again, James. But that will be after. That'll be after I guess the end of October, where we've got lots of these schemes will have come to an end. We'll know a little bit more about where we're at with COVID in the meantime. from my part, I wish it would do one. I'm bored.
Oh, absolutely. We were supposed to have a leaving party for a friend of mine who's leaving the country, and of course we can't do that.
Oh, I know. There's so many things.
It's an absolute nightmare.
So I think I'll wrap up by saying just 2 or 3 things then. So number one, if you need some cash flow modelling advice, some business modelling advice, some general financial advice about your taxes and what to do about what's coming up, Comera Professional can really assist with that, and we'll put their details on screen at the end of this. Comera Professional are a long-standing partner of HBXL. I love working with them because, as you can tell, James, very relaxed for an someone with an accounting background, if you don't mind me saying. Will help.
I did my training in the most stressful accounting position imaginable, so this is quite nice.
Yeah, okay, this is all good then. So do reach out to James and the team at Comera Professional for your advice. I should add as well, obviously in this remote working environment that we're all in, it doesn't matter where you are. You can be up in Scotland and you can be talking to James and the team. They'll work with you remotely, remote meetings like this. They can go through your financials remotely, just like they're, next door. So no problem with that. So wherever you are in the country, you can take advantage of their services.
Yeah, we are back in the office now. This, unfortunately, is not my television. we are physically back in the office. Well, certainly I am anyway. So we're here to take calls and here to help.
Great stuff. And from my part, I guess on behalf of the HBXL team, thank you for attending, everybody. And of course, shameless last little plug, Estimator Express is going to help you with all of your project costings, and importantly, as we mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 cost impact on building projects. So you can use the tools there to help you cost those in and make sure that you're not giving away margin unnecessarily by not charging your customers for that. Also, Health and Safety Expert, as I mentioned earlier, can help get you COVID secure and reassure your customers. If I was running a building firm, I'd be sending my COVID-19 risk assessment with every single job I tendered for, my policy and how I deal with COVID, to really reassure a client that I am COVID secure and that I can run the project safely. And finally, with another of our partner companies, we promote construction industry accounts. So that's a piece of construction accounting software designed just for building and construction firms. So it deals with all your construction industry specific needs, such as the tax side of things, and also looking at your materials, your labour, your plant, your subcontract and sundries as different nominal headings, where some accounting software doesn't tend to manage those different categories in quite the same way. So you can find out more about all of those software products on the HBXL website, which is hbxl.co.uk. And you can find all of Comera's details again, if you want to find them again in the future, on our partners page. I believe that's some useful info. So in summary, James, what should we sign off on? What they need to be doing before we go?
Well, number one point, as we've mentioned several times, be aware of your cash flow. Cash is absolutely king. You need to know how much is coming in, how much is going out, how much you have, and what's going to happen in the future. That will enable to make sure you're paying your staff, you're paying your creditors, and you don't run into any issues in the future. Similarly, make sure you know what support is available. If you need to take out a loan, where can you get it from? How much you need to borrow? Make use of any experts which are available. If you need accounting help, if you need cash flow help, we are here. We do provide it. It is our business, essentially. This is what we are here to do. Make sure you're aware of the opportunities which are emerging. There is this significant government investment in construction. So find out what's going on, what's available in your area, what the plans are, and get in there and make sure that they know who you are and that they're willing to use you.
Yeah. Well, good advice. Contact details to follow for James and Co. So I think on that note, I will thank you and say I think you'll all benefit from talking to James and getting some financial advice for your businesses. So thanks, James, and I'll see you again, hopefully in non-COVID circumstances.
Hopefully so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Take care and thank you very much. Cheers.
yeah.